Hi. Hello, how are you all? I hope you are all well. In this video, I want to discuss the storyline of a film called Tokyo Revenger Live Action, a film adapted from a comic with the same title. The fans have always been waiting for this one, and I'm sure this film will be no less exciting than the anime version, dude. And with me, welcome to Storyline Indo. This film started by directly introducing the main character in this film, a young man named Hanazaki take magic where he lives in a dirty and rundown boarding house that even Takaichi is willing to eat expired bread on TV. Magic sees an accident news like that where the victim who died from the accident turns out to be his ex-girlfriend when he was in high school, named Tachibana Hinata, and another victim was Hinata's younger brother named Tachibana Nato. While the accident happened, it turns out that this was caused by a dispute between the Tokyo Manji gang and a Yakuza organization. After work, when he was at the station, suddenly someone pushed him with a mason until he fell onto the railroad tracks, and unfortunately it turned out that there was a train that was about to pass by. At that moment, taking the seeds, thought he would die, but suddenly he used them, even though he immediately moved to his past dimension, namely when he was still in high school, when he realized that he was using it, although he was confused, especially when he met his friends again when he was still in high school. There was Yamagishi Mag Oto and Takuya's account, while Akimichi was still confused about what had actually happened. To him, the account even said that Takemichi had to be prepared because soon they were going to have a fight with a Class 2 student at Shibuya High School. When they arrived, unfortunately it turned out that the one who showed up was a Class 2 student. 3 Shibuya high schools are in charge and by Kayomesa, where he was a member of the Tokyo Manji gang, and that made them all scared, but the account bravely challenged Kayomesa. This incident made Akimichi remember the exact same incident that had happened when he was in high school, where if they they will lose and be battered. And sure enough, they all end up being beaten up by Kayomesa. After that incident, Mishu feels angry with God because why does he have to repeat the exact same incident as what he experienced before even Akimichi too came to Hinata's house, who was surprised by the Kimichi's face, which was full of wounds there, hinted or tried to treat Take Michi, and Hinata gave encouragement so that Mesai doesn't have to keep fighting, so she can continue to be with Hinata in the future, then use it even if it's not on purpose, helping someone from being disturbed by thugs, which turns out to be that's Hinata's younger sister named Nato. But even though it reminds me of the news of Otto and Hinata's death in the future due to an accident, the time he explains to you, Otto, that he is from the future and he knows that 10 years in the future, Hinata and Otto will soon dying there. The Kimichi just wanted to remind Otto that in the next 10 years Naoto should be able to take care of Hinata so that she remains an Ito. Who knows what happened when Akimichi shook hands with Otto. Suddenly even though it's back to the present, though surprised if he met Audi there, he knew that Nahoto should have died at that time due to an accident. But it turned out that it was Naoto who had Save take me chit from the railroad tracks there. It turned out that Noto was a detective, and he also knew that Takemichi had committed time travel to the past. Naoto said if he could live, because Br Kata Kimichi at the 10th year. That Hai had warned Otto if he had to be careful with an accident that he would experience in 10 years later, and luckily Noto also believed in Takemichi's words, so that it turned out to succeed in changing the fate of Naoto to avoid his death. But unfortunately, if it turned out that Hinata's older sister had actually died, and that made Rimichi very sad, because Oto said that Hinata's sister did not believe what Otto said about her death, so that her destiny could not be avoided. The stories that became the main cause of Hinata's death. Noto also asked for help from Non-Imagine so that he would return to the past and prevent Hinata's death by not going to MCI with Kisaki in the past, because the Naoto felt that it was their meeting that was the cause of Hina's death in the future, and because of the Kimichi who really loves Hinata, he also agreed with the plan. When Akimichi returned to the past, he was in a fight with me students, which turned out to be led by Giomesa. Meanwhile, the account that was annoyed with Kayomesa. Literally secretly, he also wanted to suckle Kayomesa with a knife, knowing that it made Akimichi even remember the same incident in his past, and if that happened, the account would go to prison immediately. But even though he immediately prevented the account by challenging Kayomesa to a one-on-one duel with him, but with one condition: if Kimichi doesn't win, he wants to meet with Michi, the leader of the Yeoman Gang, Lord of the Tomatoes, chairman of the Tokyo Manji Gang, and also their representative, namely Dragon, were very angry at Giomesa for having carried out student fights without his knowledge. While Meiki, who saw Akimichi was battered, he also wanted to get acquainted with this technique, and Nike said that from now on Nike Dante Kimichi would make friends. At night, the Kimichi and Hinata went for a walk to see the Pink Kabaya festival, meet with Mei, but it's a shame he still can't find Kisaki well, or wants to change his plan. He wants if the Kimichi should just kill him in the past, because then it's clear that MCI will never meet Kisaki, and it's certain that Hinata won't die in the period pan. But even though he refused to kill Michi because he knew that MCI was the leader of the Tokyo Manji Gang. In short, when Akimichi returned to his past with a mission to kill Miki, it turned out that Nike and Dragon came to Takemichi's school. It can be seen that the students there don't like the arrival of the two of them, until finally there was a fight between them, and they were all beaten up by Miki and his friends. However, it turned out that even though his arrival was just wanting him to take Akimichi for a walk, cycling out of his shirt, he asked why Miki wanted to be friends with this weak mice technique, even though answered that Takemi was very similar to his late brother MCI, where he was very brave even though he knew that he was actually weak, and Nike really liked people like that there, even though he invited MNC to join the Tokyo Manji Gang, and at the same time MCI too invited Take Michi to attend the meeting that evening. Short story short, no table came to attend the meeting, which was already busy attended by members of Tokyo Manji. Then Mickey and Dragon came riding a Draken motorbike. Seeing that Geomesa was attending the meeting, he immediately kicked him out. Kiyomasa to immediately leave the meeting and dishonorably remove him from the Tokyo Manji gang while at the meeting Nike discussed the fight that Passan's best friend and his girlfriend had, where the fight was carried out by someone named Osanai, who was the leader of the Moebius gang, while Maki didn't accept it. With an Osanai attitude, he also wanted to get his revenge immediately to attack the Moebius gang again, which would happen on July 13th and continue the story when Kemiki returned to the present time. They both were looking for info about the whereabouts of MCI at that time, but even though they were surprised if what he saw was his old high school friend, namely an account that turned out to have joined the Tokyo Manji gang. At night, the Kimichi was finally able to meet again with me. Experienced but Michi, he also admitted that it was actually himself who had pushed using Michi to fall onto the railroad tracks at that time. And that made using magic very, very surprised. The account told me that if he could no longer be a slave for Kisaki, and he also said if Nike's attitude has now changed since Dragon's death, because after the death of the movement, it turned out that the story of God who became Nike's representative. I begged TKI magic so that in the past, the key could change his fate, and then I decided to kill myself. The next day, at this time, Kimichi also asked for help from Naoto to investigate the case that caused Draken's death in the past, because in fact his attitude has changed since Poison's death, because if only using Michi could have prevented Terra's death in the past, it is very likely that Dragon is still alive and MCI's attitude will never change, and automatically Hinata's death will never happen. Briefly story, but even though it goes back to the past, to be precise, the day when the Tokyo Manji gang and the Moebius gang will have a TKI fight, I feel suspicious, because it could be that fight is what causes the movement to die and not Kimichi plans to immediately prevent the fight from happening. But even though followed Nike and moved to a hospital where it turned out that they both wanted to visit Passan's best friend's girlfriend, who was being treated as a result of the actions of the Moebius chairman Osana. Immediately the child's father came out and immediately scolded them both. I'm very brave to force MCI to bend his body and apologize for what happened, ma'am, because it was the responsibility of the two of them to see that. But even though they became convinced that Dragon was a man who could awaken Diego Michi, so he told the story. But even though he begged MCI to a fight between aging Toko Manji and Moebius doesn't need to happen, because it will kill someone from them. However, Nike says that the fight cannot be cancelled, because it turns out that the Moebius gang has already arrived there. Meanwhile, Passan wants to avenge him 1 against 1, but you can see if it turns out that watching is not comparable to fighting Osanai. Seeing a patient who is already helpless, it's his turn to have one kick. He immediately beats Osanai until he falls helpless, But when Nike is off guard, Osnai wakes up and I wanted to go to the tooth with the broken bottle, but luckily. But even though he saw it, so Dragon was the one who managed to complete the mission of that incident without thinking any more. Dragon immediately beat Osanai without mercy. From that incident, Kimichi didn't feel like he had succeeded in preventing Dragon from dying the next day when Akimichi was traveling with Hinata. He also accidentally saw a member of Moebius, and then no Kimichi secretly followed them all their Tikek, even though he saw Kayomesa, who turned out to be a member of Moebius, and it turned out that Kayomesa planned to kill Dragon with a knife because Kayomesa wanted to take his revenge on the Dragon who had gotten himself kicked out of the Tokyo Manji gang. But unfortunately the Moebius members saw Akimichi, who was hiding, causing Wash to be beaten by Kayomesa so that TTMC was tied up using duct tape. Luckily, it wasn't long before Hinata also came to help using a Mycin using matching felt that he was so weak that he himself couldn't fight back. But Hinata said even though Kimichi was not weak, but not Kimichi always kept fighting for the people he loved, and that was what made Hinata love the stage mice. Meanwhile, while Nike was waiting for movement somewhere, it turned out that Drake himself was waiting for Mickey in a different place, because it turned out that Dragon had been trapped by someone from Moebius until finally, when Broken was alone, Osnai appeared to finish off Dragon, while Mickey began to realize that it seemed that Dragon had when he was trapped. He immediately went to look for Draken. Meanwhile, the Dragon, who looked like he was already unable to fight the car members alone for a long time, Mickey came with the other advanced Tokyo gang members. And without much further ado, there was a battle between the Tokyo Manji gang and the Moebius gang. At the time of the fight was going on, the Kimichi also accidentally saw Kayomesa, who secretly stabbed Draken from behind, while Mickey and the other members who saw the reaction were lying weak. They couldn't do anything, while MCI only begged Takemichi to immediately take Dragon to the hospital. When Akimichi carried Dragon to take him to the hospital, suddenly you appeared again. Come on, try to stop Michi from using Michi. But this time Keiki was very brave and challenged to duels with Kayomesa, when Akimichi was already unable to fight Giomesa. Instantly, Hinata's figure remembered, and that made Akimichi finally get up and managed to beat Kayomesa and continued the story. After the fight was over, they were all at the hospital to see Dragon's condition there. Meki said if he believed that Dragon was a strong man and he would not die that easily, because Dragon has flown, promised if he wanted to stay with Image. And soon the doctor said if it turned out that Dragon had managed to escape death, and he was declared alive when he heard the news. Instantly they were all happy and touched, especially Meiki, who was actually very worried about Dragon's condition, so that he even crying. And at the end of this film, when Akimichi has managed to change destiny, because finally Dragon is still alive, Akimichi returns to the present time very happily, and it can be seen that at that time the account was still alive, and most importantly, when not Kimichi came to Hinata's house finally. But Even though I could see Hinata smiling. Because of Take Me, Chick finally succeeded in changing destiny into happiness and the film was finished. Okay, guys, that's all for discussing the storyline of the film this time. If you like it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you too for watching until it's finished. And bye.